Claus von Stauffenberg was a German army officer who became one of the most famous figures of the Second World War for his role in trying to kill Adolf Hitler. He was not always against Hitler. Like many officers in Germany at the time, he was proud of his country and wanted to see it strong again after the First World War. But as the years went on, and he saw what Hitler was doing to Germany and to the rest of Europe, Stauffenberg turned against him. His story is one of courage, loyalty, and sacrifice, and it shows how one person tried to make a difference, even when the cost was his own life. Klaus Schenk Graf von Stauffenberg was born in 1907 into a noble and old family in southern Germany. The word Graf means count, which was a title of nobility. His family had been important in Germany for centuries. He grew up in the region of Swabia, in a large and respected household. His father was part of the royal court of Württemberg, and the family had a deep sense of duty and tradition. Klaus and his brothers were raised to believe in serving their country and acting honorably. He was intelligent, well-mannered, and serious even as a child, with a strong sense of moral responsibility. As a young man, Stauffenberg joined the army, following the family tradition of military service. The First World War had ended when he was still a boy, but he grew up hearing about the humiliation Germany had suffered after the defeat and the harsh peace terms that followed. Like many young men of his generation, he wanted to help rebuild Germany's strength and pride. He joined the cavalry, which was the branch of the army that used horses, and quickly became known as a skilled and disciplined officer. He was not a political man at first, but he believed deeply in the importance of serving his country. When Adolf Hitler came to power in 1933, Stauffenberg, like many others, hoped that Germany might finally recover. Hitler promised to rebuild the army, bring back national pride, and restore the economy. Stauffenberg supported some of these goals, at least in the beginning, because he thought they would help his country. However, as time went on, he began to see that Hitler's rule was not about service or honor, but about hatred, power, and destruction. The violence, the racism, and the persecution of Jews and political opponents deeply disturbed him. Although he did not immediately act against the regime, the seeds of doubt were growing inside him. When the Second World War began in 1939, Stauffenberg was already a high-ranking officer in the German army. He served in Poland and France, and later in the Soviet Union during the invasion known as Operation Barbarossa. In the early campaigns, he performed well and was respected by his superiors and soldiers alike. But as the war went on, he saw firsthand the terrible crimes being committed by the German army and the SS. He witnessed the killing of civilians, the starvation of prisoners, and the destruction of entire villages. These experiences changed him. He began to realize that Germany was fighting an unjust and criminal war, and that Hitler was leading the country to ruin. By 1942 and 1943, Stauffenberg had become convinced that something had to be done. He was not alone. There were other officers, government officials, and civilians who were horrified by what Germany had become under Hitler's rule. They believed that the only way to save the country was to remove Hitler from power. This was not an easy decision. In Nazi Germany, even the smallest sign of disloyalty could lead to death. But Stauffenberg believed that his duty as a German officer was not blind obedience to Hitler, but to protect his nation and its people. He decided that killing Hitler was the only way to end the war and stop the suffering. In 1943, Stauffenberg was badly wounded while serving in North Africa. His car was attacked by Allied aircraft, and he was seriously injured. He lost his right hand, 2 fingers on his left hand, and one of his eyes. For most people, these injuries would have ended their military career. But Stauffenberg recovered with remarkable strength and determination. His courage impressed many around him. Even with his injuries, he continued to serve and soon became the chief of staff to the Army Reserve in Berlin, a position that gave him access to Hitler's inner circle. Ironically, his injuries also helped him gain respect, as he was seen as a war hero. This new position allowed him to work more closely with others who wanted to resist Hitler. The group included senior officers such as General Ludwig Beck, who had long opposed Hitler's policies, and Colonel General Friedrich Olbricht, who worked in the army headquarters. Together, they began to plan what would become the most famous attempt to kill Hitler, the July 20 plot. Their plan was called Operation Valkyrie. Officially, it was a government plan to maintain order if the state was ever threatened by internal revolt. The conspirators decided to use this plan as a cover for their coup. If they could kill Hitler, they would use Operation Valkyrie to take control of the government, arrest Nazi leaders, and negotiate peace with the Allies. Stauffenberg soon became the central figure in the conspiracy. Because of his position, he was one of the few people who could bring a bomb close enough to Hitler to kill him. The group prepared explosives that could be carried in a briefcase. They knew that their chances were small, but they were desperate to try. Stauffenberg's sense of honor and duty made him determined to carry out the mission himself. He knew that, if he failed, he would die, but he also believed that not acting would make him guilty of betrayal to his country and to humanity. On July 20th, 1944, Stauffenberg flew to Hitler's headquarters in East Prussia, a place known as the Wolf's Lair. He carried the bomb in his briefcase. The meeting with Hitler took place in a wooden conference room filled with officers. Stauffenberg managed to arm the bomb with great difficulty, using only one hand. He then placed the briefcase near Hitler and left the room on the pretext of taking a phone call. A few minutes later, the bomb exploded. The room was torn apart by the blast, killing several people and wounding many others. But by a twist of fate, Hitler survived. The briefcase had been moved slightly by another officer, and the heavy wooden table between Hitler and the explosion had shielded him from the full force. Believing that Hitler was dead, Stauffenberg flew back to Berlin to begin the second phase of the plan. He and the other conspirators started Operation Valkyrie, sending orders to troops to seize control of government buildings and arrest key Nazi figures. For a few hours it seemed as if the coup might succeed, but then news spread that Hitler was still alive. The radio broadcast his voice, confirming his survival. When that happened, the coup collapsed. The soldiers who had followed the orders stopped, realizing they were acting against the Führer. By the end of the day, Stauffenberg and his fellow officers were arrested. That same night, on July 20th, 1944, Claus von Stauffenberg was executed by firing squad in the courtyard of the War Ministry in Berlin. His last words, spoken before his death, expressed his belief in a better Germany. His courage did not save his life, nor did it stop the war, but his actions left a deep mark on history. Over the next weeks, hundreds of people connected to the plot were arrested and killed. The Gestapo uncovered many members of the resistance. The Nazi regime used the event as an excuse to tighten control and punish anyone suspected of disloyalty. After the war ended, Stauffenberg was remembered as a hero. For a long time, however, many Germans did not know how to feel about him and the other conspirators. Some saw them as traitors because they had acted against their own government in wartime. But over time, people began to understand that their actions were based on conscience and moral courage. They were not trying to destroy Germany but to save it from a criminal regime that had led millions to death. Stauffenberg's story became a symbol of resistance, honor, and sacrifice. Today, Claus von Stauffenberg is remembered in Germany and around the world as a man who stood up to evil. Streets, schools, and military bases in Germany are named after him. There are statues and memorials that tell his story. Each year, on July 20th, Germany honors his memory and the others who took part in the resistance. The German army now teaches his example as a reminder that loyalty to one's country must never come before loyalty to justice and humanity. His story also reminds people that, even in the darkest times, there are those who find the strength to act. Stauffenberg knew that the chances of success were slim, and he knew he would likely die. Yet he still went ahead because he believed it was the right thing to do. He believed that it was better to risk everything for what is right than to live in silence while others suffer. In that sense, he did what few dared to do. He stood up to one of history's most powerful and brutal dictators, guided not by ambition or hatred, but by conscience. Claus von Stauffenberg's life was short, but his legacy endures. He came from a world of tradition and privilege, yet he used his position to challenge the corruption of power. He began as a loyal officer who believed in serving his country, and he ended as a rebel who gave his life for the moral future of that same country. His actions remind the world that even one person, armed only with conviction, can shake the foundations of tyranny. Though his attempt failed, his courage succeeded in proving that not all Germans followed Hitler blindly. In the face of fear, cruelty, and hopelessness, Claus von Stauffenberg stood firm, and for that, he remains one of history's most honorable and unforgettable figures. Thanks for watching. If you have a comment regarding Claus von Stauffenberg, drop your thoughts below. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe.